Good morning, my name is Sandy Chris. I'm the State Director for Adult Education. This is the Bidders Conference for Title II Adult Education and Family Literacy Act funds, which is part of the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act. Today we are going to go through the RFP application, and if you have any questions, we will take questions today. Everything that we discuss today, all the questions will be on the website at mccd.edu, and we'll share that address with you again before we leave today. But this is any information or any questions you have about the RFP, this is a great time to do it. Everything is on our website right now, the application, the resources, all of the attachments and assurances that you will need to submit in order to have a complete application. I want to introduce the state staff that are here too. This is Cindy Heimbach. Cindy is our ESL and professional development person and also helps with leadership funds. This is Beth Little. Beth is the performance and accountability specialist for adult education. Megan Akins is our administrative assistant for our department. And this is Scott Bailey. Dr. Scott Bailey is our intern right now, so he's with us too to learn. So we're going to go ahead and get started. There's a lot of information. A lot of this, again, is in the RFP, but I wanted to make sure that we had a good opportunity to discuss anything that you might have questions on. So we do want to silence your phones. This is being recorded. All grant information is located here. I recommend that you check back weekly for updates. We'll have a new, if something has come up, new if we changed anything, but you can do that on our website. The objectives today are to outline the requirements of the grant, explain the components of the application, as well as define the budget and program requirements and any guidance and answer questions that you might have. This is the timeline for the RFP. The RFP was released February the 3rd. Our bidders conference is today, February the 18th, and your applications will be due March the 20th by 4:00 p.m. local time. We will not accept any applications after 4:00 on March the 20th. So please make sure that you have your application in by the deadline. We will be screening, evaluating, and going through the negotiation processes from March the 23rd through April the 30th. The local workforce development board will review applications the 23rd through the 31st. Applicants will be notified of award decisions by May the 1st, 2020. And the final program release for those who do receive funds for Title II will be listed June 2020, and official letters will go out. This is for program funds starting July 1st, 2020. Okay. Direct and equitable access is very important for the RFP application process. All eligible providers will have an opportunity to apply for these funds. We will use the same application process for everyone, and all applicants must respond to the same 13 federal considerations. There are 3 grant funding opportunities. We will use the same application for all 3 grant opportunities. Adult Education and Family Literacy funds will be WIOA Section 231 funds. Corrections Education is under 225 funds. And Integrated English Literacy and Civics Education, or IELCE funds, are Section 243. And I'm going to explain the differences this morning as we move through our program. So this is the amount of funding that is available. We have funding available by workforce districts. There are 4 workforce districts in Mississippi. We have the Delta, we have Mississippi Partnership, Twin Districts, and South Central Mississippi Works. The amount shown is based on the American Community Survey of percentage of participants without a high school diploma for that area. We have, and you can apply based on the number of counties that you serve in those areas. If you serve outside of, or if you are in more than one area, if you might have classes or counties that you serve that are in more than one district. You do not have to file 3 or 2 separate applications depending on how many districts you're in. You would just, in your application, you're going to respond to the specific questions about those counties. All right, priorities of funding. WIOA requires us to prioritize the following applicants. Those who have demonstrated effectiveness in improving the literacy of eligible individuals, especially with respect to eligible individuals with low levels of literacy. The second priority are that the services must be aligned to the local workforce strategies, priorities, and partners. The third is that services must be responsive to the needs of a person with barriers to employment. The grant award period is going to be for fiscal years 20 to fiscal year 25. The initial period of performance will be July 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2021. After the first year, renewals will be contingent on the basis of their ability to successfully implement the terms of the grant and demonstrate effectiveness as determined by outcomes, which we will discuss this morning. Important information as you are writing your RFP. You want to make sure that you are familiar with the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, the Title II Adult Education Family Literacy Act, the Combined State Plan for Mississippi, local workforce development plans for your applicable geographical area, the EDGAR rule for Department of Education, which is general administrative regulations. It includes financial requirements, our grant application and resources that are available on the website, as well as the Office of Adult Education Program Guidelines. The RFP has, the very beginning of the RFP application has glossary definitions and acronyms for you. Please read through those before you respond to your application. In the program guidelines, you will find information about accountability and performance, program design elements, how you're expected to run your classes, the requirements for those classes, the assessment policy, instructional standards, program administration, as well as qualifications for personnel and professional development requirements. This is something you need to make sure you're aware of and you consider as you're writing your RFP. All right, are there any questions about the first part of our session this morning? If you have a question, please come to the front and we'll get that recorded. So I'm going to go over background and purpose. Background, we're having a competition for funds because of the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, which was passed in 2014. Basically, the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act, or WIOA, requires alignment of workforce, education, economic development systems to support access to high-quality, comprehensive, and accessible workforce services for all individuals, specifically for those with barriers to employment. Out of the WIOA requirements, the Mississippi had to write a combined plan. In the Mississippi Combined Plan, we have become responsible for the Smart Start course, the Student Success Plan, and a direct referral with core partners that we'll talk more about. Basically, WIOA's purpose is to streamline our adult education services with the services of our core partners and help people become employable. That is the focus of everything that we do, is employment. These are the 4 core partners that are required in the state plan. We work with Title I, our adults, youth, and located workers, adults, youth, and dislocated workers, that's put through the Department of Labor, and is the Mississippi Department of Employment Security. We fall under Title II Adult Education, which is under the U.S. Department of Education. The Mississippi Community College Board is our agency for the state, and that is where we are housed at the Office of Adult Education. Title III is Wagner-Pizer, which is also part of Mississippi Department of Employment Security. And the fourth partner is Rehab Services or Vocational Rehab, Title IV. Mississippi also included optional programs, TANF and SNAP, in our combined state plan. All right, so the purpose of adult education, is to assist those who are becoming literate in obtaining knowledge and skills necessary for employment and economic self-sufficiency. We will assist adults who are parents or family members to obtain the education skills necessary to become full partners in their education, attain a secondary school diploma or its equivalent, and to transition to post-secondary education and training, including career pathways, assist immigrants and other individuals who are English language learners in improving their reading, writing, speaking, comprehension skills in English, mathematics, and acquiring an understanding of the American system of government, individual freedom, and the responsibilities of citizenship. In addition, we are to provide educational programs for criminal offenders in correctional institutions and for other institutionalized individuals. Lastly, we are to provide integrated English literacy and civics education, which is our Section 243 funds, and we will have more discussion about that shortly. So what does adult education mean? As we move through the program today, we want to understand that adult education means academic instruction and education below the post-secondary level. We are increasing our students' ability to read, write, speak English, perform math in order to attain that secondary school diploma or its recognized equivalent, to transition to post-secondary education and training, and to obtain employment. So all of those goals are goals you need to consider as you are writing your RFP proposal. These are the things that we are striving for, and these are where our outcomes are going to be reported. The goals of adult education: to improve outcomes by scaling effective models and strategies across the state. So the state office is looking for programs that work, looking for models that work, and we want to duplicate those across the state. We want to make sure that everyone has access to training to make sure they understand how to duplicate these models. Increase post-secondary transitions and credential attainment. These are our outcome specific performance targets. We must have people entering into post-secondary or entering into employment, but we must also get those credentials. Credential attainment is crucial in the RFP process for our students. Strengthen college and career readiness for our adult learners, and develop multi-level career pathway options. Multiple entry and exit points for a career pathway, stackable credentials. All of those things are key points in writing your RFP and responding to the needs of our adult learners. All right, any questions? All right. Eligible services and allowable activities. So eligible providers must use AFLA funds to establish or operate programs that provide adult education and literacy activities, including programs that provide these activities concurrently. Our target population for these services: they must have attained 16 years of age. They must not be enrolled or be required to be enrolled in a K-12 or public school system or secondary school. They must lack sufficient mastery of basic educational skills to enable the individuals to function in society, do not have a secondary school diploma or its equivalent, or are an English language learner. These are the students that we are allowed to serve under Title II. So these are the allowable activities under Section 231 and 235. Section 231 is your general adult education grant. Section 225 is the grant for corrections. These are, in bold, required for the state of Mississippi under both Section 231 and Section 225. Adult basic education, adult secondary education, and workforce prep activities are required in your response that you're going to respond to, that you're going to provide these three services. The other applicable or allowable services are English language acquisition. That's going to be dependent on if you have a need in your geographical area, if you should apply for those funds. Integrated education and training, which is IET, we'll talk about that. And the last allowable activity is IELCE, which is the civics education and English literacy. We're going to talk about each of these briefly. Adult basic education is academic education instruction below the secondary level. The secondary level is going to be 8.9 and below. So 8.9 is your grade level, or below is considered below the secondary level. These are increasing, the goal is to increase the individual's ability to read, write, speak English, perform math, necessary to attain a secondary school diploma or its recognized equivalent, transition to post-secondary education, or obtain employment. So for the adult education levels, this is below 8th grade, 8.9 below. On the national reporting systems, we're talking about educational level, functioning levels 1, 2, 3, and 4, which we'll talk about that briefly. So that's ABE. ASE is the same service, except it is at the secondary level, which is 9th through 12th grade levels. These are your higher functioning students. Their EFL levels are levels 5 and 6 for the national reporting system. English language acquisition program, which is the ELA program, is the same type skills that we're talking about: reading, writing, speaking, comprehension of the English language. Assistants attain a secondary school diploma, transition to post-secondary training, or employment. If you offer English language acquisition services, you are required to include civics education. This for your national reporting system is educational levels ESL 1 through 6. Workforce preparation activities. All funded applicants are required to provide the Smart Start course. This is a state requirement. This is part of our state Mississippi WIOA combined plan. The Smart Start course meets the requirement of the workforce preparation activities listed in the allowable activities from the grant. So these activities are designed to help an individual acquire a combination of basic academic skills, critical thinking skills, digital literacy skills, self-management. Our Smart Start course meets the requirements of Section 20317 of WIOA. Our students, we would like for our students to earn a Smart Start credential and a National Career Readiness Certificate if they are able. These things help our students become employable. IET is an allowable activity. And IET is a service approach between adult education, literacy activities, and workforce preparation activities. They must occur concurrently and contextually for a specific, and the workforce training must be for a specific occupation or occupational cluster for the purpose of educational and career advancement. In Mississippi, our integrated education and training program is called MyBest. MyBest is the Mississippi Integrated Basic Education Training Program. This is an allowable service under the Title II Adult Education 231 funds. These are the parts of an integrated education training program. It has 3 parts. The first part is adult education and literacy. That is what we were talking about when we talk about our 231, reading, writing, English speaking, math. The second part is workforce preparation activities. Smart Start course takes care of that part. And the third part is workforce training, which can be a multitude of options for your students. It can be workforce driven, it can be occupational skills training or job training, it can be an apprenticeship. It could also be a CTE or career technical pathway. As long as all 3 parts are there and you are teaching these classes contextually and concurrently with a single set of course objectives, that you meet the requirement for an IET. Section 243 is integrated English literacy and civics education. This is allowable activities under Section 243. Educational services provided to adult language learners who are adults, including professionals with degrees and credentials in their native countries, that enable such adults to achieve competency in the English language, acquire basic and advanced skills needed to function effectively as parents, workers, and citizens in the United States. Such services should include the rights and responsibilities of citizenship and civic participation. And it may include workforce training. So if you're going to apply for these funds, these are the requirements under Section 243. The only caveat to Section 243 funds is there has to be some type of IET pathway available and accessible to your students. So that would be for your ELL learners. So this is the review. This is the 231 and 225 funds. These are all allowable activities. The Section 243 is IELCE only. Okay, any questions? Okay, determining applicant eligibility. Who can apply? An organization must be considered an eligible provider to receive federal adult education funding. This will be the first step in the screening process for your RFP. An eligible provider is defined as an organization that has demonstrated effectiveness in providing adult education and literacy activities, and the state must clearly determine whether or not an application is from an eligible provider of demonstrated effectiveness. In your application, we have provided some additional information for you. An eligible provider can be any one of these. They may include a local education agency, a community-based organization, volunteer organization, institution of higher learning, libraries, nonprofit agencies, public housing. It could be a consortium or a partnership of all of these agencies together, but any one of those are considered eligible applicants. To become an eligible provider, you must demonstrate past effectiveness, providing performance data on record of improving the skills of eligible individuals. In particular, these are the individuals who are basic skills deficient in the content domains of reading, writing, math, and English language acquisition. An eligible provider must also provide information regarding its outcomes for participants related to employment, attainment of secondary school diploma, or its recognized equivalent, and transition to post-secondary education. So in your application, there's two different parts. If you are an eligible provider that has been previously funded under Title II of the Act, you must provide 2 consecutive years of performance data in Table 2.1 and Table 2.2. And in your application, you will see Table 2.1, 2.2 says previously funded. You will able to use your NRS tables that you have used in the past for performance to submit this data. They should align with the current tables that you have at your program. An eligible provider that's not been previously funded must also submit 2 consecutive years of performance. They will use Table 2.3 and Table 2.4 to demonstrate its past effectiveness in starting basic skills. And you see, not previously funded, not previously funded. The tables are a little bit different, but you have to demonstrate performance as well in order to be considered an eligible applicant for Title II funds. Consortium applicants each member of the consortium must meet the eligibility of the criteria above. So if you've got more than one applicant going in, each one would have to submit tables of either previously funded or not previously funded. Any questions on that? So the process is going to be like this. Once the state completes the process of applicant's data on demonstrated effectiveness, we will only advance those applications that demonstrate performance, whether you've been previously funded or not previously funded. Applications that don't result in a determination that you are eligible cannot be further considered for funding. Any questions about that? Amendment?
Oh,
Please
I have
ask.
to go to the mic?
Yes.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So, let's do the screen. Who are the folks who actually?
The screening, okay, that's a very good question. Neil says, ask the question, who's doing the screening? On the initial screening process, that will be the Office of Adult Ed. We'll be looking for performance data only. Once we do that pre-screening process, it will go to evaluators and reviewers outside of our office who will read and review your application for funding. Okay, thank you. Program requirements. Personnel and staffing. So this information is really a review. It's what you will find in our Office of Adult Education Program Guidelines. Suggest you read thoroughly the guidelines to make sure that when you are getting ready to submit your application, you've met the requirements in the guidelines and the budgetary requirements we have put into place. So we must assure that there's certain staffing at your facility. You want to make sure that you've got somebody to administer your grant. This one provides supervision of instruction, data collection, data entry, reporting, student support, and the instructional piece. So there's many working parts in an effective adult education program. These are considerations for you as you write your application. All staff must be properly qualified to fulfill these duties. There are written job descriptions. These are examples in our program guidelines, but there are specific requirements to qualify people or persons to teach these classes or be part of your personnel at your location. For adult education directors, the director needs to be full-time with at least 75% of that time dedicated to adult education. We prefer a master's degree, but a bachelor's is required to be an adult education director or administrator. Transition specialist or navigator. All programs must have at least one dedicated staff member to provide these services. A bachelor's degree is required. This position is directly related to your program outcomes. You want to have a dedicated staff member to do this because this is where we want to make sure they have time to work with your students, counsel with your students, provide support services for your students, and assist them in transitioning to either post-secondary or to employment. Mentor lead instructor. We recommend that each program has a lead instructor or mentor, especially for newly hired instructors that come on board. A mentor or lead teacher will help them understand the process and be a good counselor or mentor for that person. They must have a bachelor's degree and they must have adult ed experience, and they must be approved by our office prior to the $23 an hour. And that's the biggest difference in the lead instructor and a regular instructor is they get a little bit of additional allowance in their funding. Instructors full-time and part-time, bachelor's degree is required. It's a 10-to-1 student-teacher ratio per class. An academic assistant would only be needed based on your enrollment. It's not required, but if you have a large class and you need an assistant, that is an allowable expense under Title II funds. You must have an intake or data specialist to handle all of your incoming data. Data is one of the most important things that you will do for your program. All of our data has to be reported to the feds. Standards of instruction. Any questions about personnel? Standards of instruction. The OAE is committed to providing standard-based instruction throughout the state using evidence-based research strategies. We are bound by law to use the College and Career Readiness Standards that has been adopted by OCTAE and also by Mississippi, including the Department of Ed, as well as the Department of Adult Education. Adult education instructors should be providing direct instruction with our clearly articulated methods, sequence lesson plans, instructional materials with learning activities that involve your students on a regular basis providing those standards of instruction for post-secondary attainment and credentials. Approved assessments, there are 2. Mississippi has the TABE, which is the Test of Adult Basic Education, 11 and 12, for all adult ed learners. That will be your ABE and your ASC students. For TABE Class E, that is your ESL students or your English language learners. Those are the 2 assessments we use for notable skill gains. And I will provide more information on that shortly. Professional development requirements. As you're writing your proposal, you want to consider that your instructors, your data input managers, your transition specialists and support staff do have professional development requirements. The state will provide many hours of professional development for you, but you will also have some responsibilities at your local level for professional development. These are things you need to build into your budget and considerations that you need to make as you write your proposal. For local funded programs must develop an annual professional development plan that will support key program goals. So you would provide professional development for all of your faculty, part-time, full-time. You would participate in any of the Office of Adult Ed professional developments offered. And you would be required to track your professional development. This will be part of our monitoring process. And you would need to keep sign-in sheets and agenda, PowerPoints if you use them, and handouts in the event of when we're monitoring so that you have proof of documentation that these activities have been taking place. Another key piece to your RFP is that it must be aligned to the needs of the Local Workforce Development Board. There are 4. Each area has a different specific local workforce plan. For the areas in which you are applying for, you need to make sure that your application aligns with the sector strategies and the needs and purpose of that Local Workforce Development Board. The Local Workforce Development Board will review your application for alignment. They will also make any recommendations based on the review process of your application and how we can make that a better aligned program. This will not be part of the scoring process. This will be basically a review from the Local Workforce Development Board. Yes or no, did it align or did it not align? If you are in one of the areas that runs the local one-stop, we have responsibilities as an adult education provider to be in the one-stops. The one-stop is a co-location of Title I, Title II, Title III, and Title IV partners. If you are in a one-stop, if you're a part of a one-stop, adult education classes would need to be held at the one-stop. And adult education is required to pay their fair share of the infrastructure cost. The infrastructure cost comes from your proposal. So those costs will be included in your proposal, and those are qualified expenses under Title II. Financial requirements. All grantees must meet the requirements of the Education Department General Administrative Regulations, which is called EDGAR. You can find more information about EDGAR and where that is at this website listed here. All grantees will be reimbursed on a cost reimbursement basis. Requests for reimbursement should be submitted monthly, and all documentation must be made available upon request. Grantees shall ensure that your records are auditable, that they're maintained and support the expenditures of all funds received through contract by NCCD. You will submit, also we'll have periodic financial fiscal audits. We will monitor, review, and provide technical assistance as necessary. The uniform guidance under 2 CFR Part 200, and this is what you need to remember for your expenses, is an allowable cost that refers to items of cost that in general are costs that can be funded with federal grant dollars as long as they fit into the framework of responsible stewardship of public funds. Is it allocable? So is that proportional to the benefit of the programmers will receive from the cost, especially when it comes to salaries? And so I want to add this. This is why you see one instructor per 10 in a class. It is very important that you make sure that your classes, if you're going to hire a full-time instructor, that they have, there's a ratio of students that benefits or justifies having a full-time instructor. Okay? Reasonable, a cost is reasonable in its nature and amount it does not exceed which that would be incurred by a prudent person. Necessary cost, meeting a program objective. It must address an existing need. So those are the 4 points and guidelines from the federal government on financial guidance. Title II funds must be used to supplement and not supplant other state or local funds expected for adult education literacy activities. So you can't replace funds with the federal funds that you're going to be getting on things that you are already paying for. All applicants are required to demonstrate a 25% match of funds requested. This can be in kind and cash matches, state dollars, local dollars, private dollars, or any kind of support. It can be buildings, it can be space, it can be equipment. Those types of things are included in your 25% match. Time and effort is a federal requirement for those employees whose salary is paid in whole or in part with federal funds. They will be required to submit time and effort. Those guidelines are specific in our program guidelines. You can find out exactly how to do that and how to use the forms that we have available. It's for people who actually are federally grant paid or in multiple grants. They would have to complete a time and effort form. Okay, so allowable expenditures. Your proposal is your funding proposal for administration costs has a 5% limit. The federal guidelines require us or only allow us to offer 5% for administration fees. This can be also where you find your in-kind or cash contribution to this because you have to pay 95% of your administrator's salary. If there's a special rule, if that you find that 5% cap is too restrictive, you can ask for a special funding, special ruling in your application, and we will consider that as we make our decision on your final funding total. Salary and benefits are allowable. Instructional materials, assessments, and professional development activities. Budget guidelines and salaries. This is in our guidelines, our Office of Adult Education guidelines. Again, administration is capped at 5% unless you request otherwise. Transition specialists, the hourly recommended range is $18 to $22 an hour. A lead instructor or mentor can be paid up to $23 an hour. There's a range for instructors from 18 to 22. Academic aides 11 to 15, and data intake specialists 11 to 15. Again, if you have a special need or concern, you can also ask and submit that in your grant for your total funding. Unallowable activities. Capital improvements, equipment, general purpose equipment, furniture, microwaves, those type things. Food-related expenses, scholarships, student aids, lobbying, gifts for instructors or students, entertainment, graduation expenses, travel for anything other than adult education business, expenses for anyone other than the adult ed staff, and unallowable activities are the HSC and workforce credential testing costs, including proctoring, are unallowable. So let me give you a little explanation. What that means is your 95% of your budget is to be spent on instructional costs that actually are relevant to the student. You can pay for anything to prep your students for the HSE or workforce credentials. You just cannot pay for the actual testing of the CRC or for the HSE, which would be the TASC, the GED, or the HISET. Grants recipients must have written policies for purchasing and expenditures to support allowable activities for equipment. All equipment purchases must be consistent with the requests and approved budgets. If you are asking for equipment, that equipment is subject to be inventoried and part of your periodic program review. Facilities shall be suitable and must meet the American Disabilities Act compliant space, conducive to adult learning and local literacy programs. The facilities should include office space, classroom space for instruction, separate space for orientation and testing, if at all possible. And the learning environment needs to be in good condition and properly maintained. Remember, it is to be an inviting environment for your students to come to for instruction. Monitoring and technical assistance. Part of the role of the Adult Education Office is to provide monitoring and technical assistance. 100% of Title II funded programs will be reviewed by desktop monitoring and data reviews. We will have monitoring visits on site, and we will also have a biannual report card that will go out to your programs in December and at the end of the year every year for your use as well as the president's use or your superintendent, depending on what agency you are applying from. Accountability and performance, and this is where we find that we're really pushed towards employment. If you look at our outcomes, they are employment related. We will track all of our students who exit our programs. All of our students who exit the program will be tracked for employment the second quarter after exit. We will be looking at the percentage of students who are now in unsubsidized employment during the second quarter after they exit from the program. And we will also track them again for fourth quarter after exit. And then we will look at median earnings the second quarter after exit. All of these we will have performance targets on this year. We have not been given performance targets on our minimum, but we as a state were 46% in second quarter after exit and fourth quarter after exit. So I expect it to be no less than 46%. We will negotiate those targets later in April with the feds, and you will get that information later this year. The other piece that we actually have is credential attainment. We will be looking at the number of students who obtained a recognized post-secondary credential. Post-secondary is once they've reached that HSE. Secondary credential is that high school equivalency diploma, or in your participation, or within 1 year after exit from programs. So we're doing constant tracking. That's why your data is so important. Your data entry is crucial, and making sure that you give yourself credit for everything that your students are doing. You want all of that entered into the data system. We will provide the data system for your use. Measurable skill gains is part of our accountability and performance. Measurable skill gains is a documented achievement at least one educational functioning level of the participant who is receiving instruction below the secondary education level. Documented attainment of a secondary school diploma or its recognized equivalent. So these are performance measures for 2018, 2019, 2019 to 2020. We had a measurable skill gain target, overall measurable skill gain target of 50%. These are all averaged together to get our total measurable skill gain. So if you have a student that comes in on a level 2, your responsibility is a measurable skill gain is to get them to a level 3 or higher. They must move up one level to get that measurable skill gain. So those are the things that we'll be looking for in your past performance, your demonstrated performance, as well as these are things and goals that you will be pursuing with your students on an ongoing basis. We have not received our targets this year. We had 50% this year, which means it will go up to 51 or 52. They never go down. So We will negotiate those with the feds in April, and we will release those out to the programs after. Any questions so far?
Okay, so for the transition specialist,
Yes.
we have that position in our Mississippi Works grant. Do we need to put this in the adult ed grant, or are we going to continue to do this?
Yeah, it was Governor Brewer.
Governor.
So, anybody that received, okay, Dr. Parker's question is, if they received Governor's Reserve funds for transition specialists, not everyone did. You received funds from somewhere, it was either 231 funds, or it was Governor's Reserve funds. Governor's Reserve funds will end July 1. So, you need to plan to put those into your adult education grant. Now, we will reapply. We have a new governor. We will reapply for Governor's Reserve funds, so that may change. But right now, as you're preparing your proposals, you need to put them into your adult ed grant.
And my second question was on the employment outcomes. And I just want to make sure I understood it right. 46% for employment after second and fourth, all those different quarters. Is that as for the entire adult ed population, or are you dividing that out by the different categories of
That is-
youth, adult,
So, this right here, the employment outcomes, where we have been on baseline outcomes for the last 3 years, this will be the first year that they've actually had enough data to determine what our minimum requirement is. 46% is where our baseline has come in, so I'm expecting it to be at least 46% or higher. And that will be for any student that exits your program. We're trying to match them. They'll be data matched, okay? And InSpark does all of our data matching for employment, and that's the data that we rely on. Everyone here that's been funded should have their Table 5 data to use in your application. If you are not previously funded, you will have to provide some type of documentation that you have helped, or what has been your capability or your outcomes for providing employment opportunities, employment data for that student, for your students.
I have a question about the workforce prep activities, where we've been using dropout funds for those workforce prep activities. Should we be writing that into this grant or leaving it with the dropout funds? Like if we're going to have an adult ed student to take a forklift class, we're not paying for certification, but for the cost of the class.
Okay, so, and that's a very good question. I'm going to go back to, well, I can't get all of that. So workforce preparation is Smart Start. Okay, workforce preparation for the adult ed terminology is Smart Start. The dropout recovery funds are things that the college uses specifically for other expenses. You would still need to use those funds for forklift training or NCCER Core 1 training, whatever types of certifications you would still want to use that outside funding. Adult ed funding can't be used to pay for certifications unless they are part of a career pathway. But if we do extend any workforce funds, that will be an additional fund under your grant, but we have not made that determination yet.
For the academic assistant maybe,
Yes.
is there an education requirement for that? And what do you consider to be large classes?
Okay, in the program guidelines, there are some requirements for an academic aid. I believe they must have a high school diploma, and they must have taken the CRC test. So there are some requirements for your academic assistant. Academic assistance would be based on need, and that's going to be based on several factors. That could be geographical location. If it's a night class, the only instructor there, and you have 20 or 30 students coming, you may need somebody to do intake, assessments. It's really based on the specific needs of your program. So you would have to determine that need and provide justification to the adult ed office in your proposal.
So it's not like a teacher's aide.
It's like a teacher's aide, yes. But a teacher's aide can do multiple things. They can help do assessments, they can help do intake, they can do orientation, those types of duties while your instructor's teaching. There are, and you do have academic aides who need to be able to help with instruction too, which is why we put the CRC requirement in there. Preparing your application. Section 3 of the packet is where your application starts. So you have a checklist. Your checklist is on page 32. And everything that you need to submit in your RFP is listed on your checklist. Proposal format, it needs to be 12-point font, single spaced, 1-inch margins and number pages. The signature page must include original signature rules. So you want to make sure that your authorized representative, whether that's your president, your CEO, or your superintendent, signs in blue ink. Those 2 copies will be sent to the adult ed office, and 1 copy will be sent by PDF to adulteducation@nccb.com, which I think is on the next slide. Each narrative response should be limited, about 5,000 characters. And please send us your applications in a PDF format so that it will get through our servers.
I want you to lose some mic over here. The narrative response, so you're saying 5,000 here, I think in the application under, when we're answering those questions, it said 3,000. So, which, I just want to make sure that we're
You will be in compliance. We're just looking for, specifically, just to keep it between 5 and 1,000 words per section.
Okay. Because you did make sure that it should be, is that right?
Succinct, yes.
That's right.
Submission deadline. Submission deadline, March 20th, 2020, 4 p.m. local time. That is Central Time. 3 copies are required. 1 electronic copy, as I mentioned earlier, 2 paper copies there in blue ink. There's your address. We will be receiving these at our Ridgewood Road address. All right, budget submission. Applicants must prepare and submit a budget, as part of this grant proposal. You will need to detail in a narrative, describe how the funds will be spent, describing the cost of administration, instruction, maintenance, operation, any other support and services that will be included on your budget items. If you're asking for funds, please provide a description of why you're asking for those funds in the other categories. You want to explain the cost of the proposed project and that is reasonable and sufficient. You want to actually use the budget worksheet that we have listed in our required section of the grant on the website, and we will review proposed budgets and we'll negotiate back and forth with the applicant after we receive the proposal. This budget's a little bit different. We've updated it. So you want to make sure that as you're putting your instructors, the location of class, number of weeks, that you're changing your rate of pay in each of these blocks so that it will be calculated properly here. So I just wanted you to be aware of that as you change it. It should actually calculate out, for example, Sally is going to be an instructor. She's teaching 44 weeks. at 40 hours a week, it comes out to be 1,760 hours, which calculates out to about $40,480 in salary, okay? So that's just an example. Questions about the budget? The evaluation process. All right. All grant applications will be pre-screened prior to review to verify that the following criteria have been met. In the pre-screening process, we're going to make sure that you have a complete application, that all parts are there, and determine that you are an eligible provider because you have demonstrated effectiveness. If you meet the qualifications of the pre-screening, your application will be moved forward to be evaluated by an outside group of reviewers, okay? If you do not result in determination that the application was from an organization of demonstrated effectiveness, your application will not be considered any further for funding. You will receive a letter stating that, should that be the case. So it's a three-part process. Application review. Once they've gone through that screening process, this is what will happen. Number one, applications will be reviewed by your local workforce development board, and they will provide a recommendation to the Office of Adult Ed to promote such alignment. You have the criteria in your application on what they will be looking for. A review panel comprised of individuals with expertise in adult education will evaluate proposals using a rubric. This panel will provide recommendations to the OAE regarding consideration of funding. So each application is going to get scored. They'll be scored. Each section, each federal consideration has a score. So as you meet the requirements of each federal consideration, your application will be scored. I will have the rubric online for you to review in the next week or so. So it will say new, and just make sure you check back with that. Check back frequently on the website. The pre-award risk assessment tool will be used. It's in the grant application just as one of the mandated requirements from the feds. We will provide a pre-award assessment tool that just ranks you if there's anything that, and I'll give you an example, if you're receiving a grant of over $750,000, if you haven't had an audit in the past 3 years, all of those things are high-risk assessments, so we just have to do an assessment. It does not have anything to do with you getting funded or not getting funded. It's just part of the process. Your criteria used to evaluate applications are the 13 federal considerations. Those 13 federal considerations you will find in your previous packet listed, but this is how you will respond in your application. For example, on page 42 of your application, the first federal consideration, you have questions that you will respond to, and that's what we will be looking at as we score your application. They'll use a rubric with each of those questions outlined, and they will have been trained on what to look for, and the rubric is going to tell you how to demonstrate and document those things. The evaluation criteria, if you look, and this is how the rubric is set up, on page 52, it says, for example, federal consideration 1, your evaluation criteria would be applicant identifies and supports local and regional needs for adult education as described in the application. So evidence has been provided. We'll be looking for that. This page on 52 and 53 gives you pretty much what the rubric is going to be looking for, but I will be providing you a copy of the rubric. So here's your federal considerations. I'm not going to read all of these, but the law requires these 13 federal considerations in your application. Number one is that you will be responsible to do regional needs as identified in your local workforce development plan. So there's your first key of your alignment with your local workforce development plan. That you are serving individuals in the community that are most in need, who have low levels of literacy and who are English language learners or English language learners. Your ability to provide services to individuals with disabilities. Your past effectiveness, so you have demonstrated effectiveness. You're going to submit your same information again on your past effectiveness. They're the same exact tables. One is for the pre-screening, one is for the actual grant application award. The extent to which you provided or demonstrated alignment between proposed activities and your local workforce development plan. Whether the eligible providers lacks or has sufficient intensity and quality is based on the most rigorous available standards and strategies. And it includes the essential components of reading instruction. Whether the eligible providers' activities are based on best practices derived from the most rigorous research and scientifically valid research and effective educational practices. Whether the eligible providers' activities use technology services and distance education. This is your software programs. You need to talk about your software programs, how you're going to integrate technology into your instruction. Eligible providers' activities provide learning and context through integrated education and training. This is where you're going to talk a lot about your IET programs, activities delivered by instructors, counselors, and administrators who meet your qualifications. You're going to need to describe your staff, how you screen your staff, how you hire your staff. Whether your activities coordinate with available education, training, and social services. This right here, number 10, really is about your core partners and how you work with your core partners to make sure that you are serving all individuals and meeting the needs of them from a support services standpoint. Do you offer flexible schedules? Number 11, that coordinate the support services. That's your child care, transportation, mental health services. These are things that you would get from your core partner services through MDES or MDHS or possibly even go to rehab. 12 is whether you provide and maintain a high-quality information data system. We are going to provide you with that data system. The data system currently we're using is ALACES. We expect to be using May by July 1. All programs will be provided training on anything that we provide at the state, we provide training on and support. 13, you do not have to answer 13 unless you want to offer English language acquisition programs and civics education programs. If your area has a need, you need to look at you're going to use your American Community Survey to determine, do you have enough English language learner population in your area to support an English language learning class, okay? Not everybody will actually have that need or need to apply for that. But you can actually only apply for 243 funds. If you only want to do ESL, that is an allowable project or proposal. This just talks about the pre-assessment award. It's really annually, or we do this every year. It goes into your file. It's just part of the requirement for adult education Title II funds. Priorities of funding, again, those who have demonstrated effectiveness in improving the literacy of eligible individuals, respect for eligible individuals who have low levels of literacy. Services aligned with local workforce strategies, priorities and partners, and prioritize for those responsive of those with needs or persons with barriers to employment. Grant assurances. Please make sure you read your grant assurances. Our grant assurances it's located on the website. It's part of your application, and there are 40 assurances. So I suggest you read through those. Those are when you sign that, you're saying you agree to meet the requirements listed in those grant assurances. So that's an important part for you to read, as well as your president and your financial managers. Okay, there's supposed to be some questions. All right. Questions? Questions? If you have a question, come up this way. I need my favorite one.
For this problem, I have to do the actual presentation. I wasn't able to print off the application.
No, they will have to be printed from the website.
Is it something I have to sign in to do? Or?
No, it's all located on the website. As a matter of fact, I can pull that up. Let me show you where that is. You will go under offices. Adult education. And down here we have grant opportunities. And under grant opportunities, you have a list of all the grant application materials. It includes your request proposal. If you want to submit questions, any questions must be submitted on the form to adulteducation@mccd.edu. You don't necessarily have to print all of this information. It's there for you. Your required attachments are listed here, including your budget worksheet. And here are resources for your grant. And these are just connections to the law, to the EOA state plan, our guidelines, as well as I did include the demonstrative effectiveness technical assistance guide from the Fed so that you would understand that process. Any more questions? Mark, I think we can stop the video. I have one more. Wait, we have one more question. Okay, that's fine. We have plenty of time for questions.
I think I just need a little more clarification on career pathways. Are those going to be the ones that were previously approved through MyBest, and that's the ones that we're using, or is that going to be any career pathway, career tech included, that our students will be able to?
Any career pathway that your students can be a part of are included in our RFP.
And when we put all this in the application, is it, I know like when our MyBest director wrote all those up, it was this long entry and exit points on the flow chart and all that. You don't need all that, just what the programs are.
Just what the programs are.
Your PowerPoint presentation, will that be available?
Yes, the PowerPoint presentation will be available probably tomorrow. The PowerPoint will be up today, and the actual video presentation will be online as well tomorrow.
So, we had a very good question about the approved MyBest programs, because that is included in the audit guidelines that we get funded with, or FTE. So is that going to be changed and updated as well as all of our approved CTE programs and the MyBest programs?
We are going to provide more information in futures on how the MyBest piece of our adult education services, will work. For the RFP, what you need to do is describe your career pathways that are available to your adult education students. The whole approval process for MyBest and all of those things have nothing to do with how you respond to your RFP. So you need to just talk about in your RFP what's available for your students, and that process for how you will be placing them into those career pathways or MyBest programs, whether they're workforce or CTE.